and I'll pick the good ones, and we'll see what he has to say. What if they go fast Colossi instead of immortal?
Then your Roach timing attack should deal, well, it should run them over because they won't have the right immortal count to kind of hold all that off. That's why I have you do the timing attack like that.
Okay. Here's one that I meant to ask that we forgot to cover. How do we adjust to Blink Stalker?
Oh, Blink Stalker, if you ever run up against 4-gate Blink Stalker, Hydras is the only answer to it. So you really just, that's the one time where you're purely just scouting off of composition, because they're still going to have the same 4 gateways. It's really hard to scout 4-gate Stalker because they're going to be very Stalker heavy, and they're going to be able to pick off all your Suicide Overlords before they get anywhere.
Right.
So you basically look, if you start seeing a really early, like 5 or 6 Stalkers, I just cancel my Roach Warn and wait for Hydras.
And you're just making speedlings until then?
Yep, Speedlings and Hydras.
Just tons and tons of speedlings until Hydras.
Yep.
Alright. Machine, what is your toughest matchup at the moment?
I'd have to say Zerg vs Protoss. It's very, very difficult late game. I'm typically a late game player. I like to play, to my advantages, and my advantages is I macro extremely well. And Zerg vs Protoss, I'm used to just kind of maxing, sitting on my maxed army, and then, allowing that to give me map control and take the map. But I realize that you can't do that actually, like you can against against Terran and Zerg, and it forces me to play much more aggressive. So it's kind of a different style that I'm learning to adjust to, but I'm slowly starting to get the hang of it. So yeah, but it'd still be Zerg vs Protoss though.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It's tough right now. Machine, is Phoenix a viable build against Zerg, and how do you respond to it?
Yes, it is a viable build against Zerg. Noni likes to do it, or Liquid Tyler. If someone really good does it, I find I have to throw down a evolution chamber, start producing extra queens at each hatchery, and then just go straight to Hydralis and wait till I build up about 20 or 30 Hydralis, and then I have to do a timing attack on their expansion. And that's the best way I've found to kind of counter mass Phoenixes.
I'm gonna build on that with a question of my own. Like I said when we started this little session today, in ZvP I love to go Spire, and if I see a Stargate, one of my favorite things to do is throw a Spire down in the face of it, and just rely on Corruptors with my mutas to defend that. Is that something that's completely stupid that I need to stop doing?
No. A single Stargate, yes. If I'm already going Spire, I'll continue to go Spire and then add in 5 or 6 Corruptors and then add in more as needed. Double Stargate, no. You can go Corruptor and it's not going to matter. So it depends on either single Stargate or double Stargate.
All right, that's a answer I wasn't exactly expecting, so I feel smart for doing the right thing for once.
Yep.
Right, ask more questions, guys. They're getting bumped down, so I'm not seeing them all. Keep them coming. How, if you're playing ZvT, what do you look for to indicate that he's going for a Thor heavy build?
Factories early on, or a tech lab on a factory. A lot of the Terrans now are opening Blue Flame Hellion into Fast Expand Mech, and so instead of scouting that factory with the reactor for early Hellion pressure, it's because generally Terrans will use that to transition into biomech, but just straight mech, it's always going to be a tech lab add-on on the early factory.
And I guess to build on that, how are you going to respond to that? How are you going to fight that mech army in the mid game and in the late game?
Well, typically my standard Zerg vs Terran opening, I go speed into lair, and then as my lair is morphing, I'll Suicide and Overlord. If I scout bio, I throw down a Baneling Nest as the layers morphing, and if I scout mech like that, I'm going to, instead of throwing down the Baneling Nest, I need to make a Roach Warren and completely forget about going Mutalisks. So I would just go Roach Warren, take my third and fourth as I get Roaches up, and then start ground upgrades for, range attack and armor.
Okay. If it's cool with you, I'd like to have you on again next week to do some ZvT so we can cover more in depth, kind of that whole topic. But
Yeah.
back to some ZvP questions. How do you tend to play if the toss manages to cannon your ramp?
Well, I always open pool first now, but on certain maps you can still get cannoned in, like especially the two-player maps like Steps. There's two ways to go about it, and a lot of it has to do with their cannon positioning. If I see that they're putting two pylons down to block my ramp, and then they put down like 2 or 3 cannons behind that, and then no adjacent pylon behind the cannons, I'll go Baneling Bust into Zergling Speed, just because they have no time to react. They can't really scout me because they've locked me in my base, and then by the time the Banelings blow up their pylon, their cannons are unpowered, and I run Speedlings straight to their base inside their main. The other kind of reaction is you go Roach, just early Roaches, and try and pick off the pylons without being in range of the cannons, because a lot of Protosses now are starting to stagger the cannons behind the pylons so that the Banelings won't kind of take them out as well. And so that's kind of the other way to go about that. And also, because whenever I get cannon in my main, I'm always going to have a scouting probe out on the map, and I usually proxy a hatchery at a base somewhere else with that and just use that as my expansion. So those are kind of just the little adjustments that I make.
Okay. I guess one final question on that topic. What's the latest pool that you can throw down to realistically expect to fend off those cannons?
I guess 14 pool is generally fine. Like, most Protosses won't try and do it if you go any kind of like, any kind of early pool. 14 pool just tends to be the standard.
Yep.
And so they only are really going cannon rush if they see hatchery first, so I rarely run into it much anymore.
All right. A couple more questions, and then I'll let you get out of here. First, do you ever see really Void Ray heavy builds at high levels, and how do you deal with them?
Late game, yeah. Void Rays are one of the most efficient Protoss units. To be honest, it's really hard. Like, Void Rays is the one thing that you kind of have to scout out. Like a late game mass Void Ray transition can be extremely hard to deal with, especially if you're still kind of Roach heavy into Broodlords. Generally, I'll try and scout it out. If I can, you have to start throwing down mass spore colonies at your bases, and just switch to sort of like a Hydralisk heavy ground force. And that's really the only way to kind of deal with that.
All right. Just one or two more questions, and then I'll let you out of here. I want to ask this one because it's something that I always hear lower level players asking higher level players. How do you feel about the Nidus Worm, and how can we work it into our play?
Nidus Worm is something that I actually don't use nearly enough. There's a lot of different applications for it. I'm sure you've probably seen like Nidus cliff drops where a Zerg will rush like Nidus and Hydralis and be able to kind of snipe probes and things at something's expansion. Taking island maps, there's no, it's always the best way to take islands in my opinion. Just because you can constantly be reinforcing units to save those expansions, send drones to an unsaturated island, things like that. And harassment for 4th and 5th bases later on in the game. A good Protoss or Terran is going to have the outside rim of their main scouted almost, since the beginning of the game, pretty much. So it's very hard to kind of use it to harass or like do some sort of a doom drop inside someone's main, but you can use it to deal with 4th and 5th bases later on, just because they're not going to have it scouted. Another thing you could do is, while you're in an attack, maybe try and Nidus Worm someone's main, just have them distracted, and then try and do it. But those are the big applications for it, for the most part.
All right, 2 more questions. First of all, we've just spent a good 2 hours working on that Roach build. What do you feel like the best Protoss counter to that build is?
I guess if they could scout it coming, just like fast expand into like a bit earlier of a robotics facility and then be able to crank out immortals. I'm not really sure because I've never actually seen anything but 6-gate against
You've
it.
Never lost doing that build.
No, I lose to it, but yeah, I guess just like an earlier robo into immortals is usually pretty tough if you don't transition to hydras in time.
It seems to me like it's just a pretty solid, safe, standard build, and that's what makes it, kind of foundational. The fact that it is so solid. All right, so the last question before I let you out of here. Drops are expensive. You have to get speed for them to be viable. At what point in the game do you recommend upgrading drop to get any use out of it?
Always as I'm securing the Vespene Geysers at my 4th. Any earlier and you won't quite have the gas to be upgrading. You won't quite have the gas to be like heavy on your Hydra, you won't have your Spire tech. So, and also it kind of works out to where you're usually teching to Hive at that point anyway.
Right.
So
that's pretty astronomically late in the game. After your 4th adds gas, that's forever away.
Yeah. You could do timing attacks with it earlier on.
Right.
But then there's kind of risk involved in your cutting
units.
Cutting units, cutting upgrades. You're cutting something out of the build. So,
all right.
It's just generally when I get it.
Well, Machine, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us and coaching me and letting all these guys kind of listen in.
Yeah, no problem, buddy.
This is what is it? Bryce Bates, Machine.
Yep.
Bryce Machine Bates. You can sign up for lessons from him at gosucoaching.com. You can find him on Team Liquid. He's a member of the Team Evil Geniuses, and he's a kick-ass guy. Thanks a lot, Machine. I will talk to you soon about setting up another session for next week.
All right, sounds good, man. You take care.
Have a good one. You too.